But first, with lockdowns now in place for Perth and Brisbane, as well as Sydney and Darwin, Australia risks going from mostly the COVID-free country on earth to the most COVID-constrained one. Adelaide now is under tough new restrictions despite no new cases. And it's pretty obvious that while more and more countries around the world are starting to treat COVID like the flu, here we're still treating it like it's Ebola. Well, they're opening up, we're shutting down. What's the difference? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? While other countries around the world got serious about vaccination late last year, we were so self-congratulatory about avoiding the deaths that when they were setting up their mass vaccination clinics and getting the jabs done, we slid into summer complacent about the one thing that could turn COVID from a pandemic to an endemic disease, something that we could treat like the flu or chickenpox. If you want to see how bad it is, have a look at this graph. Out of the world's 38 most economically advanced countries, Australia's coming last. That's right, stone cold, motherless last, with under 5% of our population fully vaccinated. That's why roughly half our population tonight is under lockdown, because we just haven't taken vaccination seriously. And we'll never break this cycle of endless small business wrecking, debt exploding, soul destroying lockdowns based on just a handful of cases until we get our vaccination rates up to the near 50% of the UK and the near 60% of Israel. And that's not just one jab, it's two, to turn the potentially deadly disease into something no more threatening than the seasonal flu. Frankly, it's a scandal that we've been sitting on our hands for so long, relying on the blunt instrument of lockdowns that are lethal to the economy to try and stop this disease, rather than vaccination to take away COVID's lethal consequences. Now, based on today, you'd have to say that the shambles over vaccination is getting worse, not better. Last night, the Prime Minister announced that all adults, every adult in Australia, could get the AstraZeneca jab based on the Commonwealth Government now indemnifying GPs from being sued in case the AZ jab goes bad. Hardly inspires confidence, does it? This is the same AZ vaccine that the government first restricted to those over 50, then to those over 60, based on supposedly deadly blood clot risk, and then announced it would be phased out altogether by October when more of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were available. But after last night's announcement, apparently it's now all okay for everyone. How can something be usable, then unusable, then usable again, but only usable again with an indemnity? Is it any wonder people are confused and lack confidence? Last night's announcement also raises the issue of vaccine choice. Now, I've been hard on this issue from day one, as you know, so explain to me, with last night's decision, why young people who have minimal COVID risks now have their choice of vaccine, AZ or Pfizer, while older Australians who are most at risk are still stuck with AstraZeneca only. Last night, the PM also announced it would be compulsory for all aged care workers to be vaccinated.
This is not something that any government should do lightly. Imposing on a person the requirement to have a vaccine or not be able to work in a particular sector is something that no government would do lightly. And as a result, we have been considering this matter for some time now.
Great. Why wasn't this done months ago? And why do aged care workers still have the luxury of 2.5 months till September to actually get the jab? And given that all aged care workers have long been required to get the flu jab as a condition of employment, why has this been allowed to become such a big deal and drag on? Was it governments or perhaps the unions standing in the way of protecting our most frail? And despite the new rules on AZ coming out of the so-called National Cabinet last night, here's Victoria today saying that they won't necessarily follow them. So much for this new institution of government, so much for the much lauded National Cabinet, which was supposed to create a seamless national approach to this pandemic, which is though meant in practice, unless it's being paid for by the federal taxpayer, and even then the states reserve their right to do whatever they want, I believe has been an abject failure. I said from the outset, National Cabinet wasn't much more than a PR exercise. It's caused the PM to pull his punches, particularly in relation to Victoria, in order to preserve goodwill around the room, rather than demand states deliver. Given where we are tonight, in this state of near national lockdown, while all around the world, with vaccination rates up, COVID's being treated little less than the flu, here's what the PM must do. First, reserve supplies of Pfizer for the older Australians with vaccine hesitancy, who must be fully vaccinated now. Again, it's 3 weeks, full protection under Pfizer, as opposed to waiting 3 months for AZ. Now, surely our most vulnerable deserve the fastest route to protection. Second, make it crystal clear to Australians that life will return to normal as soon as everyone's had a chance to be vaccinated with AZ or Pfizer. Give people choice, and then name the date PM when you expect it to occur, because without a firm date, uptake won't be driven. Third, give people some incentive to get vaccinated, such as being allowed to leave the country without needing government permission, or no longer be subject to these ridiculous state border closures. Forget the fake kumbaya of National Cabinet. We want to see some leadership. And absent this kind of leadership that will never come from a committee of equals like National Cabinet, if this doesn't happen, Australia risks sliding from the top to the bottom of the world's COVID league tables, from the country that didn't die from it to being the country that can't live with it.